All right, well, good morning again. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We're going to talk about scientific notation. This is 5.4C, and we're going to talk about writing a number in writing a number from scientific notation into standard form. So let's take a look again at what scientific notation is. Scientific notation is the form a times 10 to the nth power, and that would be this here, a times 10 to the nth power. And that's what we have to, we'll be given something like that, we'll have to write into standard form. So we'll be given something like this, we'll have to write it in standard form over here. So let's take a look at our steps to go through. Here's the steps in order to write numbers in standard form from scientific notation. So we'll be given a number in scientific notation. How do we write that in standard form? Step number 1 is write the digits of the number without the times 10 to the nth power. In other words, write the a, because in scientific notation we're going to be a times 10 to the nth power. So the first step is write down just the a. Step number 2 is move the decimal point in our a by the number that is in the exponent of n. So n is going to give us a number. Remember, those are integers, -3, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, things like that. We're going to move our decimal point that number of spaces. If it's -3, we'd move it 3 spaces. If it's +5, we'd move it 5 spaces. And which way do we move it? Move the decimal point to the right if the exponent n is positive. So again, we've got to kind of think about things. That 10 to the nth power, if it's 10 to the 5th power, 5 is positive. We've got to move to the right because we're multiplying this a times 10 to the, if it was 5th power, 10 to the 5th power would be 10,000. We've got to multiply by 10. And every time we multiply by 10, we move the decimal point to the right. We move the decimal point to the left. To the left if the exponent n is negative. And we'll go through some thought process as well. And then write the new decimal point in its new location after you've moved it a couple spots. Moved it to the left or to the right. So let's take some examples and take a look at 6.36 times 10 to the nth. Again, here's our scientific notation. We're going to write it into standard form over here. And now we've got to think a little bit. Here's our 6.36 times 10 to the 8th power is, well, it's 6.36 times 10 to the 8th power. What's 10 to the 8th power? 10 to the 8th power is a 1 with 8 zeros after it. So if we go through maybe a thought process, we'd say, well, maybe this is 6.36 times 10 to the 8th power. Well, that would be 10 to the 8th power to be 10 times 10 times 10 times 10 times 10 times 10 times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we're multiplying the 6.36 times 10, and then multiplying by 10 again, multiplying by 10 again. And what do we get when we multiply by 10? 6.36 times 10 would give us 63.6. So that would be that one there. Multiply by 10 again, we'd get 63.6. Now we'd get 636. So if we follow all these rules, this is again our thought process that we have to go through. 6.36 times 10 to the 8th power is 6.36 times all these 10s, and every time we multiply by 10, we're moving it to the right, moving our decimal point to the right. So if we follow these steps, we'd say write our a, 6.36, and then move the decimal point by the number that's in the exponent. Here's our exponent. We're going to move it to the right if the exponent is positive. Exponent's positive, so we're moving to the right because we're multiplying by 10 each time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And there's our new decimal point. Write the new decimal point in its new location. And probably step number 5B or maybe 6 would be to fill in zeros for all these little egg carton places that we've got. So this is our new decimal point. So here we've got, there's a comma there, there's a comma there. We have 636 million is a standard form number representing this number here in scientific notation. Let's try again another example with 10 to the -8. I've got 6.36. My first thought, I guess, is 6.36 times 10 to the -8 is 6.36 times 1 over 10 million, or 6.36 divided by 10 million, it's going to be pretty darn small. So we're going to move, I'm going to start over here with my 6.36 because my first step is write the digits of that scientific notation number of just the A. So I'm going to say, well, this is 6.36. And then we've got to move the decimal point by the number that's in the exponent. So my exponent here is going to be negative 8. I'm going to move it 8 spaces, but I'm going to move it to the left because that negative 8 is negative. So I can move this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's my new decimal point, and then I fill in all these zeros here. Step number 6 here, fill in all the zeros. So here's my zeros, 0.00, and we probably should put a 0.000, but here's the standard form version of this scientific notation number. And you can see that here's our standard form number, 636 million. Well, you know what? The shorthand is a lot easier. Our scientific notation is a lot easier to write. Here's our, in blue, our number, our standard number, and this shorthand is going to be a lot easier to write. So that's the kernel. That's the basic knowledge about what this section is about, 5.3b, how to create a number from scientific notation. So let's do a couple of examples real quick. If I've got this one, 1.67 times 10 to the negative 24, I'm going to go all the way over here, and I'm going to say, you know what? I have to write first my, again, here's our a times 10 to the nth power. I'm going to write my a over here as 1.67, and then I'm going to move my decimal point by 24 spaces, but it's negative, so you got to think 1.67 times 10 to the negative 24th. 10 to the negative 24th is 1 over 10 to the 24th, and I'm dividing by 10 24 times. So I'm going to move that decimal point 24 times to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. So there's my due decimal point. And I got a little bit sloppy there only because 24 spots, man, that's a lot of spots that you have to put a lot of zeros in. There's a 0 there. And here, if we fill in all these spots, that's not a 0 there. Sorry. Here's our new decimal point. This number here is in standard form of this 1.67 times 10 to the negative 24. Sure is a lot easier to write that 1.67 times 10 to the negative 24 instead of all these zeros, right? So let's try another one. Let's try this last one. Let's try this one down here. So there's my C question. 5.5 times 10 to the negative 8. In fact, you know what? Let's not do that one. Let's do this one here because it's positive 30. We'll show again another example of why we use scientific notation. What's our A? Our A is 2. So we write down 2. There's no decimal point, so we kind of have to make one. And now we've got to move our decimal point n spaces. We're multiplying 2 times 10 to the 30th power. 10 to the 30th power is 1 with 30 zeros behind it. I can't even give you the name of what it would be. 1 with 30 zeros behind it, though. But we're multiplying by 10 30 times because 10 to the nth power, sorry, 10 to the 30th power is 10 times 10 times 10, 30 times. So we move, according to our rules, we write down our A. We move our decimal point 30 spaces, and because 30 is positive, we're moving to the right. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And there's our decimal point. And I might have missed a couple of little movements here. But again, here's our big, huge number with all these zeros in it. And we've now converted this number. And don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to write, a number like this on a test or anything. I'll make it easy enough to write down. It'd be something like that or something like that. Move it in 8 spots or 14 spots, because otherwise I've got to count all these zeros as well. But again, here in this black is our standard form number, but our shorthand is the scientific notation right there, and that sure is a lot nicer to write than this. So there's the bottom line. For class, you know what? Come into class and be able to show me what that answer is. 5.5 times 10 to the negative 8. Show me what that answer is. and we'll go from there.